The rain fell relentlessly, blanketing the city in a constant rhythm that muted its usual chaos. Neon signs flickered, their light reflected in puddles collecting along the streets. In this bustling labyrinth, Justin walked with deliberate calm. He enjoyed the solitude rain brought, the way it softened the noise of a world too busy to pause. But this night felt different. There was an unease in the air, as if the city itself was holding its breath. That's when he saw her, slumped in an alley barely visible in the dim light. At first glance, she looked like just another figure lost to the cracks of the city. But as Justin stepped closer, the truth became clear. Her iridescent purple skin shimmered faintly, shifting with the light. Her elongated limbs and silver eyes marked her as alien, one of the Karari refugees who had come to Earth seeking safety. Yet her glow, which he'd heard should be vibrant and brilliant in her kind's healthier state, was dim and faltering. It was a sight eerily familiar to anyone who has witnessed someone in dire need, a homeless person braving the cold, a child in a refugee camp, or even a neighbor silently battling hardship. In our everyday lives, we often pass by people who are struggling. Maybe it's the woman sitting on the curb with a sign, or the teenager working double shifts just to make ends meet. Like Justin, we have a choice, to ignore or to act. He chose to act, crouching beside her and offering a simple gesture, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It wasn't a grand solution, but it was enough to remind her she wasn't invisible. This is the first lesson we can take. Small acts of kindness can have a profound impact. You don't need to solve someone's entire life to make a difference. Sometimes, a kind word, a meal, or a moment of acknowledgement is all it takes to spark hope. Era, the alien woman, hesitated at first, questioning Justin's motives. "Why help me?" she asked. It's a question many of us wrestle with, whether we're offering help or receiving it. Society often conditions us to view kindness through a transactional lens. What's in it for me? But Justin's answer was simple. Not everything has to be about gain. His response challenges us to rethink the way we approach generosity. Consider community initiatives like free libraries or public fridges. These projects operate on the principle that giving is its own reward. By sharing what we can, we foster a sense of connection and responsibility that benefits everyone. Era's story also reveals how deeply society fears and misunderstands what it doesn't recognize. Her alien appearance drew suspicion, just as many marginalized groups face prejudice simply for being different. Immigrants, refugees, and people of diverse backgrounds often encounter a world that judges before it understands. This is where empathy becomes critical. If we take the time to listen to someone's story, we often find that their struggles mirror our own. Just as Era's hunger and fear were universal, so too are the challenges faced by people displaced by war, poverty, or disaster. Understanding begins with curiosity. Next time you meet someone with a different story, ask questions. Be open. Bridging divides starts with seeing the humanity in each other. But helping others isn't always easy. Justin faced resistance from his neighbor, who warned him about harboring an alien. This reaction mirrors the real-world backlash often faced by those who stand up for what's right. From civil rights activists to whistleblowers, history shows us that defending others often comes at a personal cost. Yet, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to act despite it. If speaking out feels intimidating, start small. Advocate for someone in a meeting. Call out unfair treatment when you see it. Each small act strengthens your resolve, preparing you for bigger challenges ahead. Era's final decision to offer her knowledge instead of aligning with her people's militant agenda underscores a powerful truth. Survival isn't just about enduring, it's about building a better future. In her case, she used her engineering skills to create sustainable solutions, offering hope not just to herself but to others as well. This reflects the power of contributing what you can to create lasting change. Think of initiatives like open-source software, which allows anyone to build on shared knowledge for the greater good, or grassroots movements that empower communities to become self-sufficient. Whether it's your skills, time, or resources, you can be part of something bigger than yourself. Era's story is a reminder that survival isn't just about existing, it's about refusing to be silenced. Her glow, which returned as she regained her strength, symbolizes resilience. It's the same resilience we see in people who rebuild their lives after loss, fight for justice, or simply refuse to give up when the odds are stacked against them. By standing with Era, Justin didn't just help her survive. He helped her find the courage to fight for a life worth living. And in doing so, he found purpose himself. As we go about our own lives, Era and Justin's story challenges us to ask, who are the Eras around us? How can we, in our small ways, be the Justins they need? Whether through kindness, courage, or the willingness to build something better, we all have the capacity to make a difference. The question is, will we? The city buzzed with its usual indifference as Justin and Era stepped out of the shadows. The vial of shimmering liquid tucked safely in Justin's jacket pocket felt like a fragile lifeline, a symbol of hope, but also a reminder of the risks they had taken. Era's lavender glow pulsed faintly, a delicate rhythm that mirrored her exhaustion. She walked beside Justin, her gaze wary as they navigated the maze of alleyways. "Do you think this will work?" Era finally asked, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but her silver eyes betrayed the doubt lingering within her. "It has to," Justin replied firmly. "You're stronger than you think, Era. We've made it this far. We'll figure out the rest." Her glow brightened slightly at his words, a subtle but telling sign of the connection they'd forged. For so long, Era had been treated as an outsider, by humans, by her own people, but Justin's unwavering support was beginning to chip away at the walls she had built around herself. As they approached the quieter outskirts of the city, the tension in the air began to lift. The noise and chaos faded, replaced by a strange stillness. Yet even in this temporary calm, Era couldn't shake the weight of the decision she had made. She had given up her knowledge to the Enclave, a choice that could change everything. Was it the right decision? Would her designs be used to build a better future, or would they become tools of destruction once again? Justin seemed to sense her unease. "You did what you had to," he said, his voice soft but resolute. "What you gave them could save lives. Don't let the what-ifs weigh you down." Era nodded, but her mind remained restless. She had seen too much destruction, too much betrayal, to fully trust in the goodness of others. Still, there was something about Justin, his determination, his refusal to turn away, that gave her a glimmer of hope. The pair reached Justin's small apartment, the familiar creak of the wooden stairs breaking the quiet. Once inside, Era sank onto the worn couch, her movements slow and deliberate. Justin pulled out the vial, holding it up to the light. "This is it," he said. "The thing that's supposed to make you whole again." Era hesitated, her fingers trembling as she took the vial from him. She uncapped it, the liquid inside glowing faintly as it caught the light. With a deep breath, she drank it in one smooth motion. For a moment nothing happened. Then, a warm light began to spread beneath her skin, illuminating intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story of their own. Her breathing steadied, her glow brightened, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel fragile, she felt alive. Justin watched, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You're glowing. Literally." Era allowed herself a faint smile, though it didn't last long. "The glow is temporary," she said. "It's survival, not a solution." Justin leaned back against the counter, crossing his arms. "Then we find a solution. Together." The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. She had grown used to carrying her burdens alone, but Justin's words carried weight. Perhaps she didn't have to do this alone anymore. Their quiet moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Era's glow dimmed immediately, her body tensing as her eyes darted to the shadows. Justin approached the door cautiously, peering through the peephole. "Taran," he muttered under his breath. He opened the door just enough to reveal the man standing outside, a tall figure in a dark jacket, his sharp eyes scanning the room behind Justin. "You've got trouble coming," Taran said, his voice low and urgent. "The enforcers know about the Enclave and they're not happy. You've been seen with her. You've got a target on your back now." Justin's jaw tightened. "Why are you telling me this?" Taran shrugged, his expression unreadable. "Because I've seen what happens when people like you try to do the right thing. It doesn't end well. But there's a way out, a sanctuary north of the city. Humans and Karari working together. It's your best shot. Era stepped into the light, her silver eyes narrowing as she studied Taran. Why help us? She asked, her voice tinged with suspicion. Taran met her gaze without flinching. Let's just say I'm tired of watching good people get crushed by bad systems. The world's a mess, but maybe you can make it a little less so. Justin glanced at Era, his mind racing. The idea of leaving everything behind, of disappearing into the unknown, was daunting. But staying wasn't an option. What do we need to do? Justin asked. Taran handed him a small data card. The coordinates are on here. But you'll need to move fast. The enforcers won't wait. As the door closed behind Taran, Era turned to Justin. This is dangerous, she said, her voice quiet. For both of us. Justin nodded. I know. But it's worth it. You're worth it. Her glow brightened slightly, a silent acknowledgement of the trust they had built. Together they began to prepare for the journey ahead, their resolve unshaken despite the storm brewing around them. The sanctuary represented more than safety, it was a chance to build something better. And for the first time, Era allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, a future worth fighting for was within reach. The night stretched on as Justin and Era packed what little they could carry. Every noise outside the apartment, the creak of a stair, the murmur of voices, felt like a potential threat. Era's glow remained faint, hidden beneath layers of clothing to avoid drawing attention. The city they were leaving behind seemed to loom heavier with every passing moment, its indifferent hum a reminder of the countless stories like theirs, unseen and unresolved. As they set out under the cover of darkness, Justin couldn't shake the weight of the data card Taran had handed him. The sanctuary felt like a promise but also a gamble. Would it be a haven or another fleeting mirage of hope? He glanced at Era, her silver eyes scanning their surroundings with a vigilance that spoke of years spent surviving in hostile spaces. For her, this wasn't just a journey, it was a fragile chance at redemption and belonging. The streets grew quieter as they moved farther from the heart of the city. The towering skyscrapers gave way to abandoned industrial zones, their rusted frames casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. The silence between them was heavy but not uncomfortable. Justin found himself reflecting on how much had changed since he first saw her in that alley. Back then, he had acted on instinct, not realizing that one small act of kindness would set them on a path neither of them could have foreseen. After hours of walking, they reached the edge of a dense forest. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and pine. Era paused, her breathing steady but shallow. Are you sure this is the way? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Justin held up the data card, the faint glow from his handheld device illuminating the path ahead. This is what Taran gave us. If he's telling the truth, the sanctuary's deeper in. Era hesitated, her gaze fixed on the dark expanse of trees. Sanctuary, she murmured. It sounds like a word humans use when they want to believe something better exists. Justin smiled faintly. Maybe. But sometimes believing is the first step to making it real. They pressed on, the forest closing around them like a protective cocoon. The further they ventured, the more the sounds of the city faded, replaced by the rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. For Era, it felt almost alien, a stark contrast to the crowded streets and harsh lights she had grown used to. The quiet was unnerving yet oddly comforting. Hours later, as dawn began to break, the sanctuary came into view. It wasn't what Justin had expected. Nestled within the forest, the settlement was a harmonious blend of human and Karari ingenuity. Sleek metal structures intertwined with the natural landscape, their designs seemingly inspired by the very forest they inhabited. Soft, glowing energy fields encircled the perimeter, their light blending with the early morning sun. The place felt alive, not just surviving but thriving. A tall figure emerged to greet them. His deep blue skin shimmered faintly in the light, and his silver eyes mirrored Era's. He studied them with a mix of caution and curiosity. You've traveled far, he said, his voice calm but firm. I am Lyson, one of the founders. You must be Era. Era nodded, her posture stiff but respectful. And you must be the one who created this place. Lyson's gaze shifted to Justin. And you brought her here despite the risks. That speaks to your character. Justin shrugged, his voice tinged with exhaustion. I just did what needed to be done. A faint smile crossed Lyson's lips. Then you'll fit in well here. The days that followed were a blur of adjustment. Era quickly found her place among the Karari engineers, her knowledge of starlight systems proving invaluable. For the first time in years, she worked with a purpose, her designs helping to stabilize the sanctuary's energy grid and improve its defenses. Justin, though less technically skilled, threw himself into the manual labor, fortifying walls, repairing equipment, and assisting wherever he could. The sanctuary wasn't just a place to hide, it was a place to rebuild. Here, humans and Karari worked side by side, united by a shared goal, survival and coexistence. It was a stark contrast to the hostility they had faced outside, and for the first time, Aera allowed herself to hope that maybe this could be a future worth fighting for. But the peace was fragile. Rumors began to circulate, of enforcers tracking movements in the forest, of tensions rising between humans and Karari in the outer districts. The sanctuary, though hidden, was not impervious to the outside world. One evening, as Justin and Aera stood on a hill overlooking the settlement, the weight of what lay ahead became clear. You gave me a chance when no one else would, Aera said softly, her silver eyes reflecting the glow of the settlement below. For that, I will always be grateful. Justin leaned against the railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon. You didn't need saving, Aera. You just needed someone to stand with you. She smiled faintly, the tension in her shoulders easing for the first time in days. But as they turned to head back, a distant sound broke the quiet, the faint hum of engines growing louder by the second. Justin's heart sank. They found us. The hum of engines grew louder, a steady pulse that sent ripples of unease through the sanctuary. Justin and Aera exchanged a glance, unspoken understanding passing between them. Without a word, they sprinted back toward the settlement, their footsteps echoing through the forest. By the time they reached the central square, the once calm sanctuary was already in motion. Karari and humans alike scrambled to fortify the perimeter, activating energy shields and preparing makeshift defenses. Lyson stood at the center, his commanding voice cutting through the chaos. Positions. We don't know who's coming, but we must be ready for anything. Aera approached him, her breath steady despite the tension. It's the enforcers, she said with certainty. They've tracked us here. Lyson's expression hardened, but he nodded. We've held them off before. We'll do it again. His gaze flicked to Justin. And you? Will you fight with us? Justin didn't hesitate. I didn't come all this way to stand by and watch. The sanctuary moved with practiced efficiency, a testament to the resilience of its inhabitants. Energy barriers shimmered to life around the settlement, casting a faint glow that mingled with the rising dawn. But as the hum of engines gave way to the metallic clatter of boots and the sharp bark of commands, it became clear this wasn't a simple raid. The enforcers had come prepared. From the edge of the forest, armored vehicles emerged, their imposing silhouettes bristling with weaponry. A line of enforcers in riot gear advanced cautiously, their faces obscured by helmets. The lead officer raised a megaphone, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. This is an illegal settlement harboring unauthorized Karari. Surrender immediately or we will use force. The sanctuary's inhabitants froze, the weight of the ultimatum hanging heavy in the air. For many, this was their worst fear realized, the world's rejection coming to claim them once and for all. But Justin, standing beside Aera, felt a spark of defiance. This place had become more than a refuge. It was a symbol of what could be, a fragile but powerful dream of coexistence. Aera stepped forward, her silver eyes blazing. We are not criminals, she called out, her voice steady and unyielding. We are survivors. The officer's response was immediate, his tone cold and dismissive. Survivors or not, this settlement is in violation of human law. Comply or face the consequences. Justin clenched his fists, his mind racing. He knew they couldn't win a direct confrontation. The enforcers were too well equipped, too numerous. But perhaps there was another way. Turning to Lyson, he spoke quickly. We need to buy time. If we can delay them, maybe we can get the vulnerable out through the secondary routes. Lyson hesitated, his sharp gaze flicking between Justin and the advancing enforcers. Finally he nodded. Do what you must. But if they breach the defenses, we won't have the luxury of retreat. Justin and Era moved quickly, rallying a small group to guide the elderly and children toward the hidden pathways leading deeper into the forest. As they worked, Justin couldn't help but notice the quiet resolve in Era's movements. She had come so far from the trembling figure he'd found in the alley. Now she was a leader, someone willing to fight not just for herself, but for the future of others. Back at the perimeter, the tension reached its breaking point. The enforcers, tired of waiting, began their assault. Energy barriers crackled under the force of their weapons, the air thick with the scent of ozone and the hum of technology pushed to its limits. HFYSciF and the others held their ground, their combined efforts a testament to their determination. But even as they fought, it was clear the sanctuary's defenses wouldn't hold forever. In the chaos, Era spotted an opportunity. A power conduit near the edge of the settlement had been damaged in the attack, its exposed wiring sparking dangerously. Turning to Justin, she spoke urgently. If we reroute the energy flow, we can overload the shields. It'll create a barrier strong enough to force them back, but it won't last long. Justin nodded, trusting her judgment. What do you need? Time, she replied. And someone to hold them off while I work. Without hesitation, Justin stepped forward, positioning himself between Era and the advancing enforcers. Armed only with his determination, he faced them head-on, shouting over the din of battle. You're not taking this place. Not today. His defiance bought Era the precious minutes she needed. With practiced precision, she manipulated the sanctuary's power grid, her glowing hands moving deftly over the controls. Sparks flew as the system roared to life, and suddenly the energy shields flared brighter than ever, forcing the enforcers to retreat. The silence that followed was deafening. The enforcers, caught off guard by the sudden surge, regrouped at the forest's edge, their movements hesitant. For now the sanctuary was safe. But everyone knew the reprieve was temporary. As the survivors regrouped, HFYSciF approached Era and Justin. You've given us time, he said, his voice heavy with gratitude. But we can't stay here. The enforcers will return, and next time they'll bring more than weapons. Era nodded, her silver eyes resolute. Then we move. Together. For the first time, the sanctuary wasn't just a place. It was a people, united by a shared vision. They would rebuild, not out of desperation but with hope and purpose. And as Justin looked out at the group around him, he realized something profound. Survival wasn't just about enduring. It was about daring to dream of something better. The sanctuary's evacuation began at dawn, the air thick with urgency and quiet resolve. Under HFYSciF's leadership, humans and Karari worked side by side, dismantling structures, salvaging supplies, and preparing for the long journey ahead. The decision to leave wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Staying meant certain destruction, and the sanctuary was more than a place. It was an idea that had to survive. Era took charge of coordinating the relocation of the energy systems she had helped optimize. Her calm but commanding demeanor inspired trust among those who followed her. Justin worked alongside her, guiding families to the hidden pathways and keeping a sharp eye on their surroundings. The enforcers might have retreated for now, but no one believed they would stay away for long. As they moved deeper into the forest, the group's exhaustion began to show. The Karari, though resilient, struggled to maintain their strength without consistent access to the rare minerals their bodies required. The humans, while physically capable, carried the weight of guilt, knowing that the Karari's plight was inextricably linked to the divisions of their own society. During a brief rest stop, Justin sat beside Era, who was reviewing a makeshift map of the forest routes. "How much farther?" he asked, his voice low so as not to disturb the others. "Far enough," she replied, her silver eyes scanning the map. "The next safe zone is 3 days' walk. Longer if we encounter obstacles." Justin sighed, running a hand through his hair. "What if they catch up before then?" Era didn't look up. "Then we fight. Again." Her words were calm, but Justin could hear the weariness beneath them. He placed a hand on her shoulder, drawing her gaze. "You're not alone in this, Era. Remember that." For a moment, the hardness in her expression softened, and she gave a small nod. Neither are you. The journey through the forest tested everyone's limits. The terrain grew steeper, the air colder, and the group's supplies thinner. Yet, even in the face of these challenges, moments of unity emerged. A human teenager helped a Karari elder navigate a rocky trail. A Karari engineer shared his knowledge of the forest's edible plants with a human mother and her child. Bit by bit, the group became a community. One night, as they camped beneath the stars, Lyson addressed the group. "This journey is more than survival," he said, his deep blue skin glowing faintly in the firelight. "It is a testament to what we can achieve when we stand together. The sanctuary was just the beginning. What we build next must be stronger, not because of walls or weapons, but because of trust." His words resonated, but they also carried a quiet warning. Trust was fragile, and the weight of their shared future rested on everyone's shoulders. By the third day, the group reached a clearing where the forest began to thin. Here they found the remnants of an old industrial facility, long abandoned but structurally intact. Era and the other engineers quickly assessed its potential, concluding that it could serve as their next base. The location was defensible, the nearby river provided water, and its isolation offered some protection from prying eyes. As they began settling in, Era's mind was already racing with possibilities. She sketched designs for energy grids, sustainable shelters, and communication systems that could keep them connected while remaining hidden. But even as she worked, a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind: the enforcers wouldn't stop. This new refuge, like the last, was only temporary unless they found a way to truly protect themselves. Justin noticed her distant expression as he brought her a cup of water. "You're thinking about them, aren't you?" he asked. Era nodded. "They'll come again. And next time they'll come harder." Justin sat beside her, his gaze fixed on the distant horizon. "Then we'll be ready. We've made it this far because we didn't give up. That's not going to change." Her silver eyes met his, a flicker of determination returning. "It's not enough to survive anymore," she said quietly. "We have to create something they can't destroy." As the group worked to transform the abandoned facility into a livable space, scouts returned with troubling news. The enforcers were closing in. They had found traces of the sanctuary's trail and were following it methodically. The group had days, maybe hours, before they were discovered. Faced with the looming threat, Era proposed a bold plan. Using her knowledge of starlight systems, she would create a cloaking field, a temporary barrier that could render the facility invisible to outside surveillance. It was risky and required resources they didn't fully have, but it was their best shot. The group rallied behind her, pooling their remaining supplies and working tirelessly to bring her vision to life. Justin became her second pair of hands, assisting her with every wire, circuit, and calculation. The tension in the air was palpable, but so was the determination. On the final night before the enforcers were expected to arrive, the cloaking field was ready. Era stood before the group, her glow brighter than it had been in weeks. "This will work," she said, her voice steady. "But only if we stay united. Trust each other. Protect each other. That's how we survive." The group gathered around her, their resolve evident. Justin stepped forward, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We're with you." As the first light of dawn broke, the sound of engines once again echoed in the distance. The cloaking field activated, a shimmering wave of light that seemed to fold the facility into the forest itself. From within, the group watched in silence as the enforcers approached, their vehicles stopping just short of the clearing. For what felt like an eternity, the soldiers scanned the area, their movements tense and searching. But the cloaking field held. After several long minutes, the enforcers retreated, their vehicles disappearing into the trees. A collective sigh of relief swept through the group, but no one celebrated. They knew this was only the beginning of a much larger fight. Era turned to Justin, her silver eyes reflecting the soft glow of the cloaking field. "We bought ourselves time," she said. "Now we have to use it." Justin nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Time's all we need. Let's make it count." The relief of the enforcers' retreat was short-lived. The group knew their cloaking field was a temporary measure, not a permanent solution. As the forest settled back into quiet, the survivors turned their focus to what came next. The facility they had found was a sanctuary in name only. It was barren, crumbling, and lacked the resources they would need to thrive. Yet it was a starting point. Era wasted no time. She gathered the Karari engineers and human builders, sketching designs for energy systems, water filtration, and fortified structures. Her vision was ambitious, to create a self-sustaining haven that could outlast the constant threats. But resources were scarce and tensions were rising. One evening, as the group gathered around a fire for a rare moment of rest, arguments broke out. A human farmer questioned why so many resources were being allocated to Karari-specific needs. A Karari elder countered, accusing the humans of hoarding supplies for themselves. The air grew thick with distrust, old prejudices threatening to unravel the fragile unity they had built. Justin stepped forward, his voice cutting through the noise. "Enough," he said firmly. "We've all lost too much to let fear tear us apart now. If this place is going to work, it has to work for all of us. That means sharing the burden and the benefits." Era stood beside him, her silver eyes steady. "The enforcers don't care who we are. To them we're all the same, threats to their control. The only way we survive is together." Her words hung in the air, and slowly the arguments subsided. The group returned to their tasks, though the tension lingered like a shadow. It was clear to Justin and Era that building a haven wasn't just about infrastructure. It was about trust. And trust, once broken, was difficult to rebuild. Over the next few weeks, progress was slow but steady. The facility began to take shape, with makeshift homes, energy grids, and water systems springing to life. Era's designs turned scraps into ingenuity, her knowledge of starlight systems proving invaluable. Justin, meanwhile, became a bridge between the humans and Karari, helping to smooth over conflicts and foster cooperation. But even as the group worked toward a brighter future, the threat of the enforcers loomed larger. Scouts reported increased patrols in the area, and rumors of advanced tracking technology reached their ears. The cloaking field, while effective, wouldn't hold up against a sustained assault. The group needed more than defenses, they needed a plan. One night, as Era and Justin pored over maps and schematics in the dim light of the facility, Era spoke quietly. "We can't keep running," she said, her voice heavy with resolve. "We need to make them think twice about chasing us." Justin frowned. "What are you saying?" Era looked up, her silver eyes gleaming. "We need leverage. Something that forces them to see us not as fugitives but as equals. Something they can't destroy." Justin leaned back, considering her words. "Like what?" Era's expression hardened. "The starlight systems I used to build on my homeworld, they could power entire cities, entire planets. If we can adapt them here, we wouldn't just survive. We'd become indispensable." Justin's brow furrowed. "That's a big if, Era. Do we even have the resources for that?" "We'll find them," she said, her determination unwavering. "Because the alternative is waiting for them to find us, and that's a fight we won't win." The group threw themselves into the project, scouring the surrounding area for materials and salvaging what they could from the facility's old machinery. Era worked tirelessly, her focus razor-sharp as she guided the engineers through the intricate process of adapting starlight technology to Earth's environment. It was a monumental task, but hope began to take root as small victories piled up. A functional energy core, a prototype for scalable light harnessing, and finally the first flickers of sustainable power. But with progress came risks. The enforcers, now aware of Karari technological potential, were not just hunting, they were watching. One evening, Justin and a scouting team returned with troubling news. A drone had been spotted near the facility. The enforcers were getting closer. "We don't have much time," Justin said as he and Era stood on the edge of the facility, watching the forest darken around them. "If they find us before we're ready?" "They won't," Era interrupted, her voice resolute. "Because we'll finish this. And when we do, they won't see us as targets. They'll see us as a force they can't afford to fight." Her confidence was infectious, but Justin couldn't shake his worry. He had seen what desperation could drive people to do, and he knew the enforcers wouldn't back down easily. Still he nodded. "Then we don't stop. Not until it's done." The final test of the Starlight System came on a night when the air was electric with tension. The group gathered around the central core, their faces illuminated by its soft glow. Era stood at the controls, her hands steady despite the weight of what was at stake. Justin stood beside her, ready to intervene if anything went wrong. With a deep breath, Era activated the system. The facility came alive, bathed in a light that seemed to ripple with life itself. The power it generated wasn't just enough to sustain the sanctuary, it was enough to transform it. For the first time, the group saw not just survival but a future. A future where they didn't have to hide. A future where they could stand tall. But the moment was short-lived. The distant hum of engines shattered the celebration. The enforcers were coming, and this time they wouldn't retreat. Era turned to Justin, her silver eyes blazing. "This is it," she said. "We either fight for what we've built or we lose everything." Justin nodded, his jaw set. "Then let's make sure they remember this day." As the engines grew louder, the group rallied. The sanctuary wasn't just a refuge anymore, it was a beacon. And they were ready to defend it with everything they had. The engine's hum grew louder, a steady drumbeat of approaching danger. The sanctuary, glowing softly with the energy of its newly activated Starlight System, seemed to hold its breath as the group prepared for what was coming. Karari and humans moved with determination, fortifying defenses, securing vulnerable equipment, and rallying around a shared goal: survival. Era stood at the central hub of the Starlight System, her hands dancing over the controls as she made last-minute adjustments. Justin was by her side, his eyes scanning the perimeter for signs of movement. "How long can the system hold if they attack directly?" he asked. Era's fingers paused briefly, her silver eyes meeting his. "It depends. The shields are stronger now, but they're not impenetrable. If they focus their fire, hours, maybe less." Justin clenched his fists. "Then we have to make those hours count." As the first armored vehicles rolled into view, the sanctuary's defenders took their positions. Lyson stood at the forefront, his commanding presence rallying the group. "We fight for more than this place," he said, his voice carrying over the tense silence. "We fight for the future we're building. Stand together and we will not fall." The enforcers advanced with cold precision, their weapons trained on the sanctuary. From behind their lines, the lead officer spoke through a loudspeaker, his tone dripping with authority. "This is your final warning. Surrender now and you will be spared." Justin stepped forward, his voice ringing out. "We've heard that before. We know what your mercy looks like." He glanced at Era, then back at the enforcers. "This time we're not running." The officer paused, seemingly taken aback by the defiance. "You're outnumbered, outgunned. Don't make this harder than it has to be." Era stepped beside Justin, her glow brighter than it had ever been. "We may be outnumbered," she said, her voice calm but unyielding. "But we are not outmatched." The enforcers' first assault came swiftly, a barrage of energy blasts aimed at the sanctuary's shields. The newly enhanced system held firm, the shimmering barrier absorbing the impact and dispersing the energy in rippling waves of light. Inside, Era worked furiously to redirect power, her hands moving with the precision of someone who knew the stakes all too well. Justin coordinated the defenders, ensuring every corner of the sanctuary was covered. Humans and Karari fought side by side, their differences forgotten in the face of a common enemy. A human farmer armed with a makeshift weapon stood shoulder to shoulder with a Karari engineer, their combined efforts holding back the initial wave. But the enforcers were relentless. As the hours wore on, cracks began to appear in the sanctuary's defenses. The energy core strained under the constant pressure, its glow flickering ominously. Era's focus never wavered, but Justin could see the exhaustion creeping into her movements. "We can't hold this forever," Lyson said, joining them at the central hub. "We need a plan." Era's silver eyes burned with determination. "We don't need to hold forever. Just long enough to turn the tide." As the enforcers prepared for another assault, Era unveiled her boldest plan yet. Using the sanctuary's Starlight System, she proposed to unleash a controlled energy pulse, an EMP-like blast that could disable the enforcers' technology without harming the sanctuary itself. It was a risky maneuver that required perfect timing and flawless execution. Justin's brow furrowed. And if it doesn't work? Era met his gaze, her voice steady. Then we fight until we can't anymore. The group rallied around the plan, their hope rekindled by Era's confidence. As the enforcers launched their next attack, she began the delicate process of channeling the system's energy into the pulse. Sparks flew, and the hum of the core grew louder, filling the sanctuary with an almost tangible tension. Justin stood at her side, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder. "You've got this," he said, his voice low but firm. Era nodded, her focus unwavering. "We've got this." The final moments were a blur of chaos and resolve. The enforcers pushed harder than ever, their weapons pounding against the sanctuary's shields. Inside, Era's hands moved with blinding speed, her every action guided by a mix of skill and instinct. The energy core pulsed with an almost overwhelming intensity, its glow lighting up the entire facility. Then, with a sudden, brilliant flash, the pulse was unleashed. The forest was bathed in light as the energy wave rippled outward, its force shaking the ground and shattering the enforcers' offensive. Their vehicles sputtered to a halt, their weapons powered down, and their communication systems went dark. The sanctuary, shielded by its own systems, remained unharmed. A stunned silence followed as the defenders realized what had happened. The enforcers, now vulnerable and disoriented, began to retreat, their once formidable presence reduced to scattered confusion. Cheers erupted from the sanctuary's inhabitants, a mix of relief and triumph. Era slumped against the control panel, her glow dim but steady. Justin caught her before she could fall, his grip firm and reassuring. "You did it," he said, his voice filled with awe. "We did it," she corrected, a faint smile crossing her lips. The days that followed were a turning point for the sanctuary. News of the enforcers' defeat spread quickly, inspiring other settlements to resist and sparking conversations about coexistence and unity. The sanctuary, once a hidden refuge, became a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when people stood together. Era and Justin continued to lead, their bond stronger than ever. For Era, the Starlight System wasn't just a tool, it was a promise that her people's knowledge could create, not destroy. For Justin, the sanctuary was proof that even in the face of overwhelming odds, compassion and courage could triumph. As they stood on the hill overlooking the sanctuary one evening, Era turned to Justin. "Do you think they'll come back?" she asked, her voice quiet. "Maybe," he said. "But if they do, we'll be ready." She nodded, her silver eyes reflecting the glow of the settlement below. "This is just the beginning." And as the stars emerged, their light filling the sky, they both knew she was right. The fight for a better future wasn't over, but they had taken the first step. Together.